Hello. Elizé is an enterprise instructor for Adobe, mentors at Springboard, as well as runs her own UX consultancy. She loves creating fun and educational content around UX on social media. Elizé, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited as well. I think we have a lot in common as far as content creation, design education, that kind of stuff. So very excited to chat more about that. But my first question for you is just how did you originally get started in UX design?
Yeah, so this is in early 2015. I went through a UX bootcamp General Assembly, and after that, I got my first freelance job, and it was actually a referral from another student that was in my cohort. So that's how I kind of started my career.
Nice. But let's even further back, right? Like, how did you even come to know that UX design was a thing?
Yeah, this is interesting. So after I had done a 6-month backpacking trip when I was 25 in 2015 or 2014. And at the time, I saw all these people who were able to work remotely while traveling. And I was like, oh, how do I get to do this? And I was like, maybe are these people like all coders and whatnot? So I was asking them, some fellow backpackers around. And so it was coding and then graphic design. I hadn't heard actually of UX design, but when I came back, I was actually waitressing after my backpacking trip, waitressing. And I talked to this woman who talked to me about UX design. I was told her, oh, I'm interested in maybe getting into coding. And she was like, oh, there's this other program, UX design, you might want to look into. And so after I did, I think I went to a meetup group around UX design. I also went to a one-day boot camp at General Assembly, and I was like, oh, this is totally what I want to get into. It's like a blend of, I think, strategy and creativity. And at the time I was a performer or wannabe performer, performing artist, as well as I had a few businesses as well, online businesses. So it was kind of a beautiful blend for me.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, right, fast forward 5-6 years, here we are in a pandemic, remote work is upon us. So it's interesting that back then you were like looking for remote work, being a traveler, and it does, this sort of line of work does really enable you to collaborate remotely and virtually like this. So that's super cool.
Totally.
Yeah. You and I, we'll get into this, I think, in a little bit, but you and I have a special relationship with community since we were both content creators. But I'm curious to learn more about, like, how did you start establishing community early off? Like, when you're first getting started with UX design, like, how did you find your people?
Yeah, so I think that first it came from my cohort, so other students. Also my instructor, her and I ended up running our own agency as well. And then I think that really I started doing a lot of networking through events, and going to as many meetup groups as I could, and doing portfolio reviews, and really just trying to engage with the community and see sort of if I could actually make friends, meet people that I could actually, especially because at the time, in my mid-20s, I was having like a friend shift. So I was like, oh, this is a new community. Can I, this is like a community that's really empathetic and warm. So I really enjoyed going to those meetup groups and meeting new people.
Awesome. And was this like meetup.com, like those types of meetups?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely meetup.com. And then just like other students and stuff would share little events and stuff that they would go to. And so I just kind of hop on the bandwagon.
Cool. And then you slid in there, you started an agency with your instructor. Is that?
Yeah.
That's cool. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So 2 or 3 years after I graduated, I started working for my instructor, who was my mentor, and we decided to go into business together and run an agency. And that was, such a great experience for me, and actually how I got connected to Adobe. Adobe was one of our clients. And that's kind of how, now I teach Adobe XD for Adobe, and that's how I got connected with them. And it was just such a wonderful experience to be client facing in that kind of context, working and hiring designers. And I think that my first real job outside of the freelance job, I started to hire designers and grow a team at a digital marketing agency. And so I started to gain that skill set, but I was really able to kind of cement that when I started to work with her, and we started to run Digital Karma at the time.
Okay, so I want to shift a little bit to talk a little bit more about design education. It sounds like you working with Adobe really sparked some of that in you, but can you talk a little bit more about like how did you get into design education?
I think it first started with actually working at General Assembly and teaching boot camps there, one-day boot camps there, and then it morphed into doing content on YouTube. And I had already been working with Adobe doing design work for them. And then they saw, oh, you're doing all this content on LinkedIn, we see. Would you want to teach and become one of the first group in the Americas to be an XDI, Adobe XD instructor? So then I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to. And then it kind of sort of snowballed from there. So that's kind of how it began.
Very cool. So what does it look like then to be an Adobe XD instructor? You know, do they sort of help brainstorm ideas with you for like the type of like lectures or lessons to teach, or is it a lot more just like on you to kind of come up with whatever that is?
So it's very different. Each session I do is very different. It depends on the audience. So sometimes it's a webinar. And so I did one for Rutgers University this week for the women, for a women in tech group there. So every time I do a session, I will meet with the client or who I'm going to be teaching for, and I'll figure out, okay, what are their needs around, why are they trying to learn this tool, and create a session that's just specific for that. So let's say for this Rutgers one, they didn't know that much about UX. So I actually did like 5 to 7 minutes just introducing them into what UX is and the UX UI process, and then talking about the tool that they can use in order to build the artifacts like mobile screens and whatnot that they can put into case studies and et cetera. So it's really just depending on what that group needs. And sometimes it's, with an actual enterprise client. So I did one for another agency, Razorfish, and they wanted to understand, okay, here's our process, here are the tools we're using, here are some of the pain points we're having, and then I'll take that information and build them a session that's just specifically based on their particular needs.
Well, that sounds like such a variety of like potential content you could create for them.
Oh yeah, it's different every time.
You also are a GA instructor, General Assembly, and you said you do, you started out doing those like one-day boot camps, I guess, right? What are you doing with GA now in regards to design education?
So it's still right now, I'm doing one-day boot camps or 2 to 3 hour session workshops as well for them. And so it's typically on the weekends and something that I do sort of, it's not the main thing I do, but it's something I'm doing as well.
Okay, great. So if someone wanted to specifically learn from you, let's say at GA, would we be able to link a link to your class with GA, or what would that look like?
Yeah, so right now, the best thing to do is actually connect with me. They can contact me through my email address and we can share that. It's Elizé at elizeux.com. And I have an email campaign where I'll share all of the events that I'm doing, whether it's through Adobe, through GA, etc. Constantly keeping people up to date on ways that they can learn UX. And oftentimes there's free options and then there's some paid options and stuff. So that's the best way, because right now I'm still waiting for what my schedule is going to be for Q1 of next year.
Perfect. Yes, we will definitely include the links below. Lastly, I know you are a Springboard mentor, which is another design education thing that you do. Could you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, so Springboard is 6 months long, and you, as a mentor, you sync with your mentee for once a week for the duration of their 6 months. So you really get to build a deep relationship and a one-on-one relationship with the mentees and really see them from learning what UX is to getting them and helping them get job ready and get their case studies, into a great place for them to start looking for work. Definitely much more of a deeper relationship that you get through that course.
I want to dive a little bit more into that because I'm personally curious about this too. How does someone get paired with a mentor in the Springboard program?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. One, it's based on the mentor's availability, their particular skills, also their mentor performance rating, as well as feedback from previous students and the past student completion rate. And then on the flip side, students will fill out a questionnaire prior to starting the course, and around their availability as well, and areas that they want to focus on, and what they're looking for in particular with a mentor. So some skill sets might be more into research or prototyping, or maybe particular tool that they're interested in. So that's kind of how they pair them.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. Like in a much more personalized way. What is the role of a mentor throughout the experience of a student at Springboard?
Yeah, so we're really there to be guidance and support to that student, and really on topics that matter to them. So the student gets to guide, these are the things that I want to talk about this week. These are the things I'm struggling with, or that these are the things I feel like I want some more guidance on. And that's a big aspect. And then also for us to give them a lot of more real world insights too. What's it going to be, really like to work for someone else, or to be client facing, or ask questions around collaboration, or how you would interact with an engineering team or a product owner and stuff like that. And the other aspect is really thinking about networking guidance as well. So one of my students recently, she was like, I want to start like already, maybe getting starting to apply. And she's only halfway done. And I was like, well, I said, something I would suggest to you versus like applying already is to start networking now. And, I said, find a community that fits you. So I'm part of a community, like a Los Angeles community. I'm part of a few women's communities. And I told her, I connected her with another Black community, and she actually connected with them and already got a conversation with Amazon about a potential internship option site, right? So really kind of guiding them, because I always don't believe in like sending your resume to just like an infinite black hole and just hoping for the best. I really believe in the power of networking and really helping guide students in the best sort of way that can actually get them that job.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you have that conversation with them, because it really is. It's about relationships, getting to know people. It can seem like it will take longer that way, but if you're just submitting your resume and your portfolio into the black hole, like you said, that tends to take a lot longer. It doesn't seem like it, but it probably will. So just like looking a little bit more on the process, just like within Springboard, because a lot of people on my channel, they're new to UX, they're new to product design, they want to get started. Like if they're going to sign up for Springboard, like how should they expect to work with that mentor? Is it like on them to set up those times to chat? What does that relationship look like to you?
Yeah, so there is a set time every single week that we will meet. So it's based on the availability of again, like the mentor and the student. And so there's just a time slot that's chosen, and we can adjust it as we need to. But it's a set time every week for 30 minutes to talk about homework, to talk about any questions that they need answered, even to talk about ways to motivate them if they're feeling discouraged. 6 months is a long time, right? So sometimes there's gonna, of course, be moments where you're like, can I do this? Or I'm just lazy this week, or whatever roadblocks come up. That's the time that we have to have that one-on-one video chat conversation and build that relationship. And then there's also, of course, they have homework. So we have to not grade, but somewhat kind of grade them on their homework and give them feedback on their homework as well. Answer any questions that come up too during the week that they may have. And there's also a program for them to get a hold of any mentor at any time. If they have like a question, they have something urgent and they can't wait to our meeting time, they don't want to do it through an email, they can actually have a video chat with a mentor and get answers that way. So a lot of my mentees have done that. They'll have a couple sessions with other mentees to really help clarify something for them in that moment.
That is really cool. That is news to me. I think that is really the power of going virtual too. I mean, you can really, if you have a big group of mentors, different time zones, different places, maybe, whatever they're doing in their life, to have times where they can be available to meet with people. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, totally.
And then I kind of love this question. I've asked it before to others who are design educators and mentors, but what would you say is the most common, or some of the most common questions you get for students that you work with?
I think that, am I going to get a job? Of course, is like the number one, right? There's so much worry and pressure when you're starting something new to be like, is this going to pay off? Am I good enough? Also, like, do I need to be a great visual designer? You know, sometimes that's really hard when you're starting off and feeling uncomfortable with how your visual design looks initially. That's always, you know, a topic of conversation. The process of design is very different than typical education, where there's a particular answer, there's a specific answer to a problem, typically, right? Is this the right answer? Is this the right answer? And with the UX process, there is no right or correct answer. I think that that's always challenging for designers, especially coming from a formal education or totally something, you know, totally different than design, to be like, wait, what do you mean? I have to figure out if, you know, all these different ways to solve a problem. And that's kind of always a question, like, is this always going to have to happen? Is like, and it's kind of interesting for people to find that out and then to kind of be empowered by it later down the road, you know? And that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, that's really great. My final question before we kind of wrap things up is, what is something a student could do to prepare going into a session with you that would really like help them to get the most out of it?
I think that it's best when students are going through their homework or, you know, reviewing any of the literature that they have to kind of go through and everything. I think it's best to, when they're in that moment, to have an area where they're writing out questions or thoughts or things that they're still confused with in that moment in time, and let that digest, because sometimes after, you know, a whole week, maybe certain things start to formulate in your head and you understand it, but then there might be some outstanding questions and thoughts that you still need clarification on. And so prior to the session, students will send what they want to go over for that session, and they can ask particular questions as well. And that's great to kind of send all that information in prior, so then the mentee can think about it, can have some time to be like, okay, what is the best way to approach this? And then, so then we can have just a really great conversation when we begin. We're kind of both on the same page, already have done that sort of discovery, and feel really confident just getting into the meat of it. Because 30 minutes, it can be a short time. So feeling really prepared and feeling very direct with that I think is important. And sometimes it's also great for not just what you're learning or anything you're confused with, but how you're feeling too. So feeling discouraged, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling, you know, these different things that come up, and writing those and kind of journaling, you know, through it, and being able to talk about it. And that's a topic of conversation that comes up, you know, with my students as well. Yeah. So how to navigate all those feelings of starting a new career.
Yeah, really prepare yourself to maximize that time together, whether it's about the work itself or about something more emotional. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. 100%.
Okay, Elizé, you have a YouTube channel, you're active on Instagram, you are a design educator with GA, with Adobe, with Springboard. What excites you the most about design education, creating content? Like, where are you focusing your time mostly these days, and what gets you the most excited?
I think that what gets me excited is, so like I said previously, I would have a performance background, and I actually didn't do any sort of formal education. I found school boring for me. I was, I don't want to, you know, I didn't feel like it was the right route for me. And what I'm excited about is reaching out to those people who want something engaging and fun. And so that's what I try to bring to my students, is a sense of excitement and wonder and connection and having a good time while learning. And that's what I hope to do with everything that I do, with all those, you know, different programs that I'm a part of, is really just kind of spark that joy and the joy of learning in a way that I wish I had, and that I hope to give, and especially to other young women. You know, I think about where I was in my early 20s and kind of continuously reaching out to that type of person with my content, and getting them excited and empowered as well. As far as what I'm doing right now, I am doing so many different things, and I'm also still designing. I work for a nonprofit right now. I'm really excited about the type of work that I'm doing for this project. I love doing so many different things and talking to so many people. Obviously, that's kind of been my MO for a while now, right? With like all my agency background and all the different various projects. So I guess I like to keep my mind busy and constantly have new problems to solve and new people to chat with, and keeps life fun.
I super relate to that. And also, I've spent a bit of time watching your videos and checking you out on Instagram and all the things. And I have to say, you are really doing a great thing. So thank you so much for sharing yourself with everyone else. It's definitely making an impact.
Thank you as well. I commend and respect you. And so super excited we get to chat and connect on this level.
Yeah, me as well. I'll be including all of the links below in the video description, but is there anything else that you want to share before we close things up?
No, that's everything. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, and excited to see what other new content you create.
Thank you.
Well, to connect. Have a great weekend.
Bye.